One more round of applause for Jay. So mine is a story of the places where we get the things that connect us. And I want to start in Okemah, Oklahoma, which is where my mother is from. And it's a little town right off I-40 in the rolling hills of Oklahoma. It's the birthplace of Woody Guthrie. And it's a little town that all my family on my mom's side lives in. And my aunt and uncle, Aunt Marilyn and Uncle Mac, had started a five and dime called the M&M there many years ago after my uncle left the military. And this five and dime had a flapping red, white, and blue awning at the top and a big picture window that every Friday night, which was game night in Okemah, Oklahoma, they'd paint a big mural, beat the Trojans, go Panthers, on the mural. And it was the kind of store where people came in and out, the community cycled through. My aunt and uncle made sure to stock the shelves with the kinds of things that the people in the community needed. And I remember going in as a child, and we'd see, my family members would work there, and those aprons they had that said the M&M. And community would come in and out. Politicians would come in and out. My Aunt Nezzie worked at the store, and she was never quite cleared 5 feet, had a big head of white, bluish hair, big glasses, and she turned out to be a political machine. She knew how to get the American Legion auxiliary ladies out to vote like nobody's business. And so the politicians who wanted to run for office in that part of Oklahoma, they had to go into the M&M and pay and kiss my aunt's ring. So it was the place where you'd go to learn the stories, hear the gossip, know what was going on. And I remember drinking a chocolate malt there and just feeling like this is the place. This is my family. And years went by, and I noticed a few things changing. My aunt and uncle got a little bit more worried, a little bit more stressed. Less employees showed up. The store got a little dustier. And I remember getting into my family's minivan and driving back to where we are from in Kansas, and about 20 miles out of town, passing a big new Walmart. Big shiny building and asphalt parking lot. And that was probably the last time that I went to the M&M, because it closed up like many stores in middle America. And a long, big main street in Okemah just became one of many of the closed up stores that were part of the town. So if you fast forward a few years to my parents' community, this is a little farming town in Stafford, Kansas. It's right in the heart of Kansas, and for as far as the eye can see, it's wheat fields. And this town is so small that it's got one stoplight that blinks. Doesn't even turn like red, yellow, and green. Just blinks. One general store in the main street, and about 10 churches, one of which is the church my father preaches at and has for a very long time. And so this one general store on the main street that is mostly also boarded up stores from an era gone by. This one store is called Duckwall's, and it's a regional chain. And I remember going in when I'd come back to visit my parents, and it's a kind of store where you really need to check the expiration date before you buy anything. It's very dusty, and there's like a big row of greeting cards that are, faded by the decade of sitting inside the store and under the sun. So when Duckwall's decided to close about a year and a half ago, even still, it was a bummer, because it meant that people in this little town of Stafford, Kansas, had to drive like 40 miles to get the kinds of things that they needed, to get Scotch tape and bags and lunch pails for their children. And 40 miles is a long, long route to drive for those kinds of things. But more importantly, it meant that the part of the community where you could see the people you know, and you could hear the news and that sort of thing fell apart, that there wasn't that anymore. But the people of Stafford decided to do something different. They met up in a living room one evening, preachers, farmers, teachers, a Midwestern living room, big furniture, over iced tea and cookies. And they said, we don't want to live in a town with a boarded up Main Street. We want a store. And so they decided to make their own store. They pulled together the capital that night. Enough people committed the capital they needed to get this off the ground. Now here we call that crowdfunding. In Kansas, it's called a capital campaign, or just a good old-fashioned community coming together. And they opened it up to even increments of $25, so people all across the town could invest in this store. And they did it. They pulled together enough capital. So then they held a community meeting in the store that didn't have anything in it, but they opened up the doors. They brought in all the metal chairs from my father's church. People sat down, and folks laid out the vision for the store. They had notepads on the wall where people could go write the kinds of things that they wanted to see in their store. My mom wrote, I want contact lens solution. I have had to drive 40 miles for contact lens solution for the past many years. And they did that. They did it. They created that store. It was open for business. It was called this about a year ago, called the Stafford Mercantile. The U.S., their member of Congress was on hand to cut the ribbon the day that they opened the store. There's part of the store that was for local artisans. So who knew in this farming town there was a potter that made beautiful pottery. And, folks knitting and crocheting blankets and jams and jellies and that sort of thing. And I went back probably a few months ago with my son, my new son who's a year old now. We went home to visit my parents in Kansas. And I went to the Stafford Mercantile. And I was so pleased to see that they'd also built in a soda fountain. And they'd done a survey of the community, and one of the things that came up as part of this store creation process was that people wanted an ice cream store. So they did it. They put it in the back of the Stafford Mercantile, and one guy actually knew where there was a big bar back from the Prohibition days. It was an old speakeasy bar back, and he went with a set of volunteers to the shed where it was being held. They brought it in, they refurbished it. Different alumni classes who are, part of the high school alumni classes bought the different stools to sit in front of the soda fountain and the chairs and tables. And I sat there in the Stafford Mercantile sipping my chocolate malt, and I thought how cool it is that people all over the globe are turning to one another. And they're building the kind of economies and communities that they want to see. The people are building time banks and bicycle kitchens and seed banks and babysitting cooperatives. And there's a new emergent generation of entrepreneurs who are building business models built on the idea that we could open our homes and share our homes and our cars and our skills and our time with one another. This radical, ancient idea of collaboration and sharing has a whole new renaissance in this moment in time. And I believe it's a movement of people who believe that if we turn to one another, we can access more abundance than ever, and that together we're better than alone.